Good evening. With your CIGTV news update, I'm Simon Boxall, standing in for Donna Bush. In this evening's top story, the Governor's Office yesterday joined an international crisis preparedness exercise organized by Britain's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. The workshop aimed to test the emergency preparedness of FCO personnel in the Cayman Islands, Jamaica and the Dominican Republic, as well as staff in London. Exercise Sunseeker imagined the aftermath of a tsunami that came ashore on Grand Cayman and also adversely impacted other participating countries. The Governor's Office led the local response, which included other Cayman Islands government agencies.
One of the objectives of the exercise is to see how we can all work together to provide a coordinated response. Another thing that we're testing is our relationship with other overseas territories. So we've got visitors observing the exercise from Bermuda, from Anguilla and from the Turks and Caicos Island, as well as representatives from the Foreign Office in London and also Foreign Office staff from Miami who deal with consular issues. So it's about how we all work together internationally, how we work together with Britain, and very importantly for me, it's about how we work together with the Cayman Islands government and hazard management and the police, fire brigade. So, you know, there's a lot to test in one morning.
Mrs. Kilpatrick described the exercise as productive.
Well, I think it's been a success, certainly, because we're already picking up a lot of lessons learned. And some of those can be quite small things, like making sure you've got the login for the telephone. And some of them can be quite big things about what the protocol is, who decides where we put our limited resources. So one of the things that's being discussed at the moment is the deployment of the Royal Navy and who will receive most benefit from that deployment. So there are small things and big things that you can do work on in advance so that in the unfortunate event that there is a real emergency, we'll all be even more prepared than we already are.
Thursday's training preceded the Cayman Islands government-wide hurricane preparedness exercise that Hazard Management will lead next week. The National Trust believes the Cayman Islands has much to gain by learning lessons from past storms. That was a message from a panel discussion last night. Less than a week into the 2014 season, the latest in the Trust's lecture series took place at the Georgetown Public Library. Entitled Weathering the Storm, the panel discussion focused on lessons the country might learn from past storms to help it adapt to future challenges. Panelists included Historic Education and Development Manager for the Trust, Denise Bodden, Hazard Management Director, Mr. McCleary Frederick, and photographer Courtney Platt, who co-authored a book about Hurricane Ivan. While the session offered considerable technical information, experts did not shy away from personalizing the effects of storms on their own lives and on those of other Cayman Islands residents. Ms. Bodden shared a particularly compelling story about a well-known Cayman Brac resident during the hurricane of 1932.
We know quite a bit actually, about the 32 hurricane and the wreck that it caused on that island because of people like Captain Keith Tibbets and many others. Captain Keith was a young man at the time, and to summarize his story, he was on island because he wasn't really old enough at that point to go off to sea like many of the other gentlemen were doing. He actually was asked by his mother when the hurricane picked up to please take his grandmother up to the bluff and to try to get her to safety because the water was quite high at this point. The storm surge had kicked in and the water was very high. So he was trying to make his way to the bluff with her when a piece of wood comes flying by and literally decapitates his grandmother. At that point, he literally lets her go in the water. Goes back, gets his mother, and of course now has to explain what's happened, and of course younger siblings. So that was a memory that we should not have just tucked in a book and read and forgot about because it was horrific. But that should have been coming up quite a few years, not only in the minds of the Cayman Brac people, but also the people here in Cayman.
Mr. Frederick, meanwhile, used his own experience to more effectively describe the difference between storm surge and wave action in a hurricane.
A lot of people mistake the wave action with storm surge, and that's not the case. As you see on the diagram right there, it shows a couple of levels: mean sea level, which would be normal up and down tides, and you got normal high tide. Now, the storm surge is created as a result of pressure from the storm, and it actually is, to use an analogy, just the whole surface of the water around the center of the storm raises up because of the low pressure, and that travels along with the storm. In addition to that, you have the wave action on top. So a lot of people mistake the waves coming in as storm surge. That is wave action. Storm surge is when you see the water level. And I was actually in my house. My house is, to my front porch is 21 feet above sea level. My floor is 24 feet above sea level. And I can tell you, if you drive into East End now, you see that big concrete wall that's on the side of the road? That was the storm surge. That is the level that the water stayed. So that was the storm surge. The wave action on top of that then rolled on into my yard up to 21 feet above sea level. So the storm surge stayed at that level from about, I guess, late Friday night. It kind of rose up and then stayed up until early Saturday morning. And then we just had continual wave action coming in that just tore down everything in its wake. So we have wave action in East End that doesn't affect our wall. But like I said, just imagine the sea at that level constantly, at that level with the wave coming in on top of it, and that is storm surge.
CIGTV will air Weathering the Storm in full at a later date. In other news, last night 16-year-old Ethan Whitaker took home title of Young Musician of the Year for his performance of Chopin's Minute Waltz on the soprano steel pan. Ethan placed first in the 7th annual Butterfield Young Musician of the Year competition at the Harkwell Theatre. Shakira Hodgson on the alto steel pan was second, both the students of Mr. Earl Lapierre. Meanwhile, St. Ignatius student Elena Tacchetto placed third for her performance on the piano. 13 finalists competed across different instrument categories. There were 3 singers, 2 saxophonists, 2 pianists, 2 steel pan players, a clarinetist, a euphonium player, and 2 violinists. Competitors performed 2 contrasting pieces of less than 10 minutes each, one which had to be from the classical musical genre. In addition to a check for $500, Ethan will receive various performance opportunities on the island, including the Cayman Islands National Arts Festival. And in our final story of the day, national airline Cayman Airways reminds passengers that its check-in desk for international flights must close an hour before the flight is scheduled to depart. The 1-hour cutoff is to meet regulatory requirements. The airline recommends that passengers headed abroad arrive at the airport at least 2 to 3 hours before departure. Those who check in online should arrive at the airport at least 90 minutes prior to departure to drop off their luggage. They may arrive an hour before with no luggage. Check-in time for domestic flights between Grand Cayman and the sister islands is at least 1 hour prior to scheduled departure, with close-off being half an hour before. Cayman Airways representatives say that closing check-in an hour before departure has the added benefit of ensuring that passengers are able to clear security and reach their gate on time. As always, reminding you to tune in to Radio Cayman's Talk Today show weekdays at 12:15 with host Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. And don't forget, you can watch the CIGTV News Update rebroadcasts throughout the night on our Facebook and YouTube pages. That ends another news update here on CIGTV. As always, I'm Simon Boxall. Good night, and thanks for watching.